For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer. For you and them. Visit safety.findlayvolvo.com to learn more.
So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. The good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the premier membership. We'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. On today's show, if you're just listening, you're gonna hear my smile through this whole entire episode. I've been chasing this man down. I hit him up on Instagram, and one of my favorite players of all time. He graduated, he went to University of Utah, graduated there, was drafted 16th in the draft in 1998 to the greatest team of all time. And if you know me, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because the Titans, which was the Oilers at the time, the Tennessee Oilers. But this man was a part of two of the most memorable plays in NFL history. Number one, the Music City Miracle. Take that, Bills, because you got me in 1993 and I had to hear about Frank Reich. But you know what? This man here saved my life because I didn't have to hear about that anymore. And also the tackle. And if my brother, which I know he's watching right now, the tackle did happen, but it happened in the Super Bowl. And I believe that from some angle, my angle, it went over the goal line and we actually won the game. And I'm still protesting it to this day. But please, it's my honor. The greatest part about this story too, guys, is that it's not just about the NFL career that was absolutely phenomenal, but it's about what he did afterwards. 2 master's degree, a doctorate, and now he is a principal at a high school in Franklin, Tennessee, and giving back to the youth, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. Please welcome to the show, the one, the only, Mr. Kevin Dyson.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. I need you to do all my hype videos. I mean, and I appreciate you being patient with me, man. I know we've been trying to connect for some time now, man, and schedules being what they are. I think you're on the West Coast, and I'm over here in Central and trying to link up, man. But I'm happy to be on here, man. I appreciate it. And to find out you was an Oilers fan, man, that's just another notch for you, brother.
Hey, I have jerseys. I have the jersey. I have my Oilers parka from when I was in high school. My mom and dad bought me a jacket when I was 6 years old, became an Oilers fan, been an Oilers fan ever since. And I'm the most irrational fan that you could ever think of. And I really believe, I tell my friends every year, we're going 17-0, home field advantage for the playoffs. We're going to win the Super Bowl, and then we're riding off into the sunset. Let's go to one of the most pivotal times in my life. I was standing on a couch, standing on the couch, jumping up and down. And I was holding like my hands like this because there was 10 seconds maybe left in the game. We're down. I say we because I've been a part of the team. Wycheck catches the ball. He reaches forward, which makes it a lateral. Mm-hmm. Tosses it back. Take us to that point, Kevin.
Well, I go back even further. So we were playing the Bills, and we had pretty much been dominating the game. Now, Freak went off, had a bunch of sacks and safety, and really was in control up until about halfway through the fourth quarter, and they got loose a little bit. Had a long drive, had a big play. And eventually they took the lead with about 16 seconds to go, as you mentioned. And we just started thinking like, how are we losing this game? We pretty much been in control the whole time. It wasn't like we're putting up points, but they weren't doing nothing, and we were doing enough to keep them at bay on offense. And then after they scored, Jeff Fisher and Alan Lowry come get me and say, hey, Dice, we need to go in. Mace is out and Anthony Dorsett is out. The irony behind all that is Derek Mason, he went out because of concussion he had in the third quarter, I believe, on a punt return. Well, while that was happening, I actually went in to get intravenous fluids because I was cramping up in the going into the fourth quarter. And so I went. We had a little time, had a break, so I went and got an IV so I could finish the game. Well, lo and behold, at the end there, when they called my name, Anthony Dorsett Jr., he was cramping and couldn't run. So I was the backup to the backup. So I wasn't even supposed to be out there. So then they keep calling me and they telling me, hey, we're going to run home run throwback. We're going to do this. They're going to squib it. Frank's going to get the ball. He's going to run. He's going to lateral it to Isaac Byrd, who got moved in position unfamiliar to him because he wasn't a part of the play either because he got moved in a position unfamiliar to him because Derek was out. So I moved into a position he would have been in. And then when they blooped it, when Doug Christie blooped it, or the Bills blooped it, he came up to field it, but Lorenzo Neal caught it. Well, I learned this about 5 years ago, I think. Now, Lorenzo Neal, he told Frank, hey, they're going to kick it to me. Come get it, and I'll block for you. He ordained it. Like, I didn't realize this until, like, almost 15 years after the fact that Lorenzo Neal told Frank, hey, come get this ball from me. And so, and they blooped it. Lorenzo Neal catches it. Frank goes and gets it from him. Isaac Byrd, for whatever reason, I've never asked him 20-some-odd years later, what was he thinking? But he came up. He got out of position. I saw Frank reel back. The ball's in the air. I reached back. And, man, my job was the easiest. All I had to do was run. And that just made me look – it made it easier. So, you know, I get a lot of credit because I'm the one with the ball at the end. But there's a lot of people that did their job to make it even possible.
So, Kevin, talk to me, too, about this because you weren't supposed to be in that play, right?
Right.
And it just so happened. And I find that there's so many things like that in life where it's your time, right? And then after that, a lot of times people try and construct their time again, right?
Yeah.
Can you speak to those kids out there that a lot of times they're thinking, this is my time, I have to have it, and then maybe it doesn't happen, but their time is coming, but it's not going to be when they understand it.
Yeah, see, that I think that's key. What you said is, and I try to tell that to me, my own son, is you got to be prepared for that moment when it does come. You know, you're going to have disappointment. You're going to have time when you expect some kind of outcome to happen, or you feel like you put in the work for this, you prepare for this test and it didn't work out. But what do you do after the fact? How do you bounce back? But then there's also the other side to things like the Music Miracle, where I wasn't supposed to be a part of the play. I was put in a situation where I just had to be a football player in a lot of respects, just go ahead and make a play. And it worked out. Well, we fast forward 3 weeks, I'm a part of the progression. I get tackled short of the goal line, and I had to deal with that disappointment. And here's something where I am a part of the play. I am a part of the process. My number is called. And for me, that was the first time that I can think of where I wasn't successful in an athletic movement or play or something, including the Music City Miracle. And that's at the biggest stage of my life. It's the biggest game of all games. At that point, it was the most watched Super Bowl ever. So here I am literally with millions of people watching me, and I don't score, and I'm not successful. So go back into your question, man. That's the lesson in it all is you got to be prepared for whenever your number is called. I don't care what you do, whether you're in finance, whether you're in real estate, whether you're as a preacher. You just never know when a moment is going to present itself, and you have to step up and quote unquote make a play. And there's going to be times when you feel like it's your opportunity. You are prepared, best prepared for this, and it doesn't work out for you. But what do you do after that? And I'm 47 years old, and I'm still learning in that respect. Especially, I've had to, as you mentioned, reinvent myself in a lot of respects, man. And I feel like I'm still learning and getting better. And I think that, to me, from my personal self, I can say that having that ability to get better at something and recreate myself motivates me. And it's very similar to making yourself a professional athlete in that respect.
So take us back into that. So I want to go back to the Music City Miracle because I want all my Bills fans out there to understand about the Music City Miracle, and I'll explain. So that happens. Then I say we because I was ready. I was ready.
Yeah.
I was ready. You guys just didn't call up. I was a free agent that year.
You made your number called. You'd have been ready.
I was waiting, but I mean, talk to us about that team, though. I mean, you're talking the Freak, right? So we got the Freak there. We got Eddie George. We got Steve McNair. We got Lorenzo Neal. We got Wycheck. I mean, this is a recipe for disaster for other people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Talk to us about going through the playoffs and then the preparation for the Super Bowl, because most fans out there of their team are like you're showing up to play. Why did that play happen? But there's so many mental things that are going on when you're dealing with the Super Bowl. Can you take us into that mentality?
Yeah, I've been a part of a lot of winning teams, and I've been pretty fortunate in that sense. And there's usually a common denominator with all of them, man. There's a and as cliche as it sounds, a brotherhood. I don't know if you have any siblings. Oh, yes, I do. I know you have a brother who's a Bills guy, but we forgive him. But anyway,
he's a Rams fan, Kevin. He's a Rams
fan. I'm sorry, he's a Rams. I still forgive him. But even with that, you forgive him for the shortcomings. Him being a Rams fan is a shortcoming, and you forgive him for that. And regardless of the circumstances, you can argue all day long, you can battle all day long, but when it comes down to it, you don't mess with him. Only you can mess with him, and I am right now, but you can mess with him. But in retrospect, when it really comes down to it, nobody else can. And that's kind of how it was for any team I've been on that has been successful. We may have our arguments, but you best believe when we put that uniform on game day or game night, you can't mess with my brother next to me. And we're going to go to battle for one another. And nobody cared who got the credit. As big a star as Javon was, big a star as Eddie was, big a star as Steve McNair was. We have Hall of Famers Bruce Matthews on the spot. You talked about Lorenzo Neal. We talked about Samari Rowe, Blaine Bishop, some of these all-pro guys on that team. And you know what? At the end of the day, all they cared about was winning. And they felt like they can make the play to help us win. I feel like I can make a play to help us win. There was guys that weren't starters that felt like they can make a play to help us win. And that's whether you're in business, that's in education, or in sport. And that's the common denominator is nobody cares who gets the credit for success. We all have the same vision, the same goal. And I don't care if you make all pro and I don't. If at the end of the day we're holding up that trophy, it's all good. It's all love. Now, you're going to have your battles, and we had battles leading up to the Super Bowl. Wrap them too. We had one the night before. We had a fight, but you would have never known it when the lights came on, right? Because we knew it once we got together and that was done. We had an argument, that was over, and we moved forward. And that was the beauty of that team.
What do you wish more people would know about the Super Bowl environment going into it?
Oh, man. Golly, I remember walking out, me and Eddie, there's several players that go out real early before the game and warm up. And this was no different. You try to be as normal as you can, right? Even because it's, it's a big game, but initially you drive up to the stadium, your butterflies start kicking in a little bit, and you get dressed and you go out, warm out a couple hours for the game, get loose, then go get taped and whatnot. But I remember me and Eddie kind of went out at the same time this day for whatever reason. And you soak it in. It's a Super Bowl. Not everybody goes to a lot of them, Tom Brady aside. It's not like you going every year. And I just remember, I said to Ed, man, this is different. Like, wow, this is special, man. The energy level, and there's not very many people in there. Not much more than media. Not much more than people that hold the cords for the cameraman. It's pretty secluded in a lot of respects still, but it was so much more energy compared to even a playoff game, and it's almost indescribable. And I just remember, like, here we are, let's go. And then we both just kind of jogged up and went through our own personal routines and to get ready for the game. And that right there, and from a player's perspective, that energy it's undeniable because literally it's the biggest game in the world, especially at that moment. Maybe the World Cup globally, for the world, because it has a longer history and it's literally the world sport. Soccer is the world sport. Aside from that, there's probably not a bigger event than the Super Bowl, and you feel that. And now, when the whistles blow and you get hit a couple of times, you're just playing football. Now all your training comes into place, all your habits come into place, all that kind of comes back. So you're not really worried about it being Super Bowl anymore. But there's a moment though, like right immediately for the game, you're like, wow, this is different. And even a week leading up to it, it's just you're asked to do interviews. It's just so much fanfare to the game, and it's being honest with you, it's almost hard not to be distracted because there is so much leading up to the game, and it's all about these two teams. You know what I mean? And then a lot of times it's about these specific players, and I happen to be one in Super Bowl 34 because of the Music City Miracle. So I was being tugged a lot. Hey, this people want to talk to you about the game. This people want to talk to you about the game. Hey, can you do this TV interview? So there was a lot going on, man, and it's the most abnormal but normal week of football you can have. And I wouldn't trade a lick of it for anything else, man. And it is really almost like a drug. Like, I can see why Tom Brady and guys have a hard time hanging it up. I mean, most of us do. It's like there's a mourning period that comes when you feel like you have to hang up your cleats, but getting to the Super Bowls and trying to win a championship, man, there's a drug. It's almost like a drug. It's like I gotta chase that high again, almost, really. And I don't mean to joke about getting high and drugs and all that stuff, but it's that kind of utopia that you have of chasing that dream. And once you get a taste of it, you want it again and again and again. I don't. I mean, I wouldn't have cared about being in the Hall of Fame or being All Pro. I really wanted that ring, and I can talk. I can probably speak for Bruce Matthews, and I don't want to. I can probably speak for Eddie. I can probably speak for Steve. I can probably speak for Javon, but that's not my place to. But I'm gonna say this: most of them would trade a lot that they accomplished for that chance to win that ring again, because that's how important that is to them guys every day. People can say they want to say about contracts and everything else, but at the end of the day, you want to hold that Lombardi trophy and get them rings, man. And that's it. That's why dudes compete the way they do.
So how do you deal with it? This would have been a question for me, is how do you deal with the high of it? And then when you were talking about the hang it up, and there's some that hang it up early, right? That just, say like a Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders, I'm out. Like, I'm in and I'm out. Jim Brown, I'm in, I'm out. And then we see people drag it on. How, like, talk to us about that mentality, because it's literally like a death. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, man. In reflection and in writing, man, I've compared it to overcoming an addiction or overcoming death. The 12-step process in which those overlap. There's a time of grief, a time of depression, a time of acceptance. There's denial. There's all. I mean, there's literally it's literally like giving up and burying your first love of your life. It's the first thing you fall in love with. It's your longest relationship you've ever had up until that point, right? Because I've been playing football since I was 7 years old, and I retired at 30. So 23 years at that point was the longest relationship I had, longest committed relationship I had, because I was working out every day, eating right, doing all these different things, right? And so, but to that point, I put everything into that to be successful as a professional athlete, and then to come to realization that it's over. And then for me, and I don't speak for everybody else, but for me, it wasn't necessarily on my terms. It was on everybody else's terms, because I had several injuries, and I just wasn't getting opportunities as I once was when I was a young incoming 16th draft pick. And so it was, man. It is like overcoming, whether overcoming an addiction or overcoming your mourning of death. It's kind of similar. There's a lot of similarities in that, and I've kind of shared that on different media outlets and things of that nature. And finding the hard thing is for lots, because there is a depressive state that most guys go to, is finding your purpose again. Because you think of sport, as much of it is that it's a kid game, so much of your purpose is outlined for you. I knew get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and go work out. I knew eat well. I knew study my film, study my playbook. I knew to compete. I knew all these things, watch, correct those errors. I knew all this stuff. And then that becomes your norm. That's your routine. And all of a sudden you get to the point, you're in your 30s, and some guys who are fortunate up into their 40s, it's like, now what? Now you can start your own business. You can do some different things, but that competitive environment of that pursuit of perfection, trying to get better at your craft every day, it's almost irreplaceable. And a lot of guys, it takes a long time to overcome that. Some guys do better than others. Some guys never do. And then you hear stories, guys that lose their money or commit suicide. And those are the dark side of things. And I only mention that because that is part of the story with a lot of players. But the other side of that is what next? What do I do to fill that void? What gives me purpose again? You can say I'm making XYZ money with my business ventures, and after a while you realize, okay, that's it. But what fills that void that makes me want to get up in the morning and do something? I don't care if you got 40 something businesses. Is that it, or is your motivation the check? Because a lot of guys, sometimes it's just the check. It's not necessarily what gives them purpose. And I've heard that from other teammates and other guys that, some of them is trying to rebrand themselves and being competitive that way. Some, like myself, it became education, and I love playing golf, so it's about that reinvention and finding your purpose again, and being aligned with yourself again. Because for so long, for me, till I was 30 years old, it was aligned for me in a lot of respects.
So, Kevin, my I believe it's my uncle-in-law. I don't know exactly how it's my wife's uncle, but I guess I could call him my uncle. He coaches in the Major League Baseball, and he has for years. And I said, well, how do you coach the greatest athletes in the world at that sport? He said, actually, I don't ever tell them to do anything. I just ask them how they're feeling when they do something. And I said, okay. And I said, but that doesn't sound like coaching. He said, Kelly, the difference between a home run and a foul ball is about that much. And so, Kevin, the difference between you as one of the, I believe, one of the best receivers ever, and a kid who maybe has the same physical talent, but doesn't make it to the league. Can you talk about that difference? Because it's not, wow, he's got bigger muscles than me, he's faster, because you could be the same exact speed, but it's like a game of not inches, but millimeters. What's the difference between a person making it to the Super Bowl, having the Music City Miracle, being, arguably, I still think he got into the end zone, and then the kid who maybe goes to college, is a star in high school, and then just doesn't make it to the league? What's the difference?
And I appreciate these questions, man. And I say this because I am, like you said, a principal. I've coached football, been athletic director, and I've had similar conversations. And what I tell them is, I'll start with high school and trying to get into college. What separates you? If there's another kid, like you said, down the street that has the same measurables, you look at them, they're both 6'2", both 180 pounds, both run a 4.4 or whatever. What separates you? A lot of times it might be the transcript, grades, right? I can get him into school. I can't get you into school. Sometimes it's the stuff outside of school. This kid gets in trouble. This kid is a model student. And then I'll fast forward. I'll go back to when I was drafted. In 1998, I was ranked, depending on publication, anywhere from 2 to 3 as receivers. The consistent number 1 was Randy Moss. Well, and he had a past that followed him. It was almost like he was forgiven but not forgotten. So when it came to draft time, people brought up some of this stuff in his past that he had been resurrected from. He had overcome that. He had made amends and did what he overcame that. But for whatever reason, in that draft process, especially back then, that seemed to be brought up. So then the question became, okay, I got this 6'4", 205-pound receiver that runs a 4.2, 4.3. I got this 6'2", 201, 200-pound receiver from Utah who runs a 4.3, 4.2, but graduated from college, didn't have passed, wasn't arrested, didn't all these things. So I became the quote unquote anti-Moss into a lot of respect. So lo and behold, I ended up being the first receiver taken, and I think primarily because of the fit. I fit the personality of the Tennessee / Houston Oilers at the time, whereas Moss didn't necessarily fit what they were necessarily the makeup of that team. However, his talent, in my opinion, suggested he be a top 5, top 10 pick. But for whatever reason, and I'm making assumptions, he dropped. And I think most people made the assumption he dropped because of something he had did as a kid, which is not fair to him. But I also say when he dropped, I dropped. Because I was told, and I thought everything had me going from 8 to 16 where I went. He was anywhere from, I think the worst I saw was like 8, 9, and then he ended up dropping down to 21. So to come full circle to your question, I give you an example in my own personal life where that played out. As far as here's two guys on paper, very similar measurables, both coming from, well, I was a Power 5 school. Utah at the time wasn't a Power 5 school. We weren't in the Pac-12, but they are now, and we're coming from similar backgrounds, except for he was a Heisman candidate. But here's this kid from Utah who hadn't had a background of issues, a past of issues, and this other kid did, and it played into my favor in the sense that I was the first receiver taken, whether I deserved that or not. I just wanted to play ball. It wasn't nothing against me. It wasn't Kevin Dyson versus Randy Moss, and I don't think Moss would even tell you it was Randy Moss versus Kevin Dyson. We both just wanted the opportunity to get in the league and do the best we could. You see what I'm saying? And so, but I say that to answer your question because it illustrates your point of sometimes, man, you gotta make amends with what you did, or own up to your mistakes, or not make those mistakes. Distance yourself from those things that can take you away from your ultimate goals and dreams, whatever they may be.
Kevin, it's a thing that I have a challenge with ESPN with, is that our team, the Titans, Oilers, never gets any coverage no matter what. Like we are never a headline.
Ball market.
Okay. And and that's what they say. But I think that there should be a whole network to that. Now, there was just a ESPN about the Ravens, and almost the whole thing was about the rivalry between the Titans and the Ravens. Can you talk to, because that was some of the most rabid football that I've ever seen. And when you talked about getting on the field and once you got hit, then everything kind of, you settled in. But you got hit at a different level than the kids get hit today. Am I correct on this?
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that rivalry?
Man. So I'll go back. My rookie year, 1998, we're playing Baltimore Ravens. We played them twice. They were in our division. We were the Central Division at that time. It was us, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. So it was a pretty physical conference, division, I should say. I remember at the end of our season, we went 8-8. And mind you, we played Minnesota, who went 15-1 that year with Randy Moss, and went to Super Bowl, or they didn't go Super Bowl. They lost to Atlanta in the NFC Championship game. We had played Miami, who made the playoffs. Of course, we played Pittsburgh, who was good, made the playoffs. So we played some pretty good football teams. Well, Baltimore that year, I think, went 5-11 or 6-10. I can't remember. And at the end of the year, of course, you go back home. I'm one of the few. I may have been the only professional athlete at that time, University of Utah, professional football player. I think me and Luther Ellis were only ones that were in the league at that time, maybe one other guy. And I remember going home and I'm working out, and they were like, man, what was the toughest team to play against? I said, the Baltimore Ravens. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, you don't understand. That was the hardest defense I've ever played in my life. And they're like, I think they won 5 games, 6 games, whatever it was. I'm like, man, don't let that record fool you. That was one of the best teams I have ever played against in my life. If they ever figured it out on offense, that team going to go to playoffs and not win a Super Bowl. And I said that after my rookie year. And we beat them twice. I think once it was like 9-6, and the other time was like 12-10. Like, that's the kind of game it was, right? Just socking each other in the mouth, trying to make plays. And people looked at me and I was like crazy. And so I say all that to get to this. That team, that physicality, the mentality of both head coach, both of them were brash and braggadocious about their teams, about their star players, ours being Eddie George, theirs being Ray Lewis, opposite side of the ball. And we have egos. We all have egos, right? And we all want to be competitive. We all want to win. It just was kind of like this perfect storm for this 4 or 5 year period where we battled and we went after each other. And then one coach made a comment about the other coaching team. Then the other coach made another comment about the other coaching team. And we just went back and forth. And in the middle of all this was the players and gladiators, people that hate to lose, like Eddie and Ray and me and Steve and Shannon Sharp and Dwayne Starks and Michael McCrary. Like, there's so many talented guys. Peter Boulware. I'm trying to think. Quadri Ishmael, Trent Dilfer. Like, even people can say what they want to say. Man, he did what he's supposed to do on that team, and we just battled. Man, it was a fun rivalry. It was between them and Pittsburgh. If you couldn't get up for those 2 games, especially when they left our division, it was still like this lingering effect. Like, man, this Pittsburgh week, man, this Baltimore week. It was fun, man. It was as close as you get to having a college rival at that time, because you have your rivals. You had the Bengals and the Browns. You had, you have a couple things like that. The Steelers and Packers and whatever, but it's still not like the college football rival. So this was as close as you get to having like a football rival you played on the last Sunday or last Saturday of every month type thing, or last Sunday or Saturday of the season.
Kevin, I mean, very, very few people are going to be picked 16th in the draft and be able to do that, go to the Super Bowl, be a part of the Music City Miracle, do the whole thing that you did. As a kid growing up, you had aspirations to go to the league. A lot of kids do. My son told me, I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? He's 11. His name is Maddox. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, you already know, Dad. He said, I'm going to go to Cal. I'm going to play quarterback there, and then I'm going to play for the Titans. And I was like, we got to work that out. So I got to talk to Uncle Kevin and see if he can put a good word in. But take us back, take us to that young Kevin that gets in the league and that pinch me moment. Take us to that first pinch me moment that you're now playing with people maybe that you watched.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I go back when I was 11 years old. I told my mom I was going to the NBA. That was my dream. Football was just something I could do. It wasn't my dream. My dream and my passion was basketball. Like, I played basketball until football season came around. Then I picked the basketball back up, and I quit every other sport. I wasn't even going to play football in high school. I didn't go to the off-season workouts when I got to high school. I didn't do anything. It was the first day of school, and one of the coaches who happened to come from the junior high I came from, who was now at the high school, knew the kind of athlete I was, to see me play, and said, why you didn't come out for football? I said, I'm just going to focus on basketball. I'm too little, too skinny to play football. I don't want to get hurt for basketball. He was like, well, just do me a favor. Just come check it out, see if you like it. If not, I won't bother you again. Came to a couple practices. And then he ended up making me punt returner, kick returner, started at running back, and almost had a punt return for a touchdown, a couple big runs, a couple big catches and all this. And I was like, well, I'm hooked. I was hooked. I loved playing and competing. I liked football, but basketball was my thing. So then I played the season. Of course, basketball came, and then again, and then I played summer basketball and did nothing about football until football season came back around again, and then had a pretty good junior year, had fun, and then same cycle. Went back to playing basketball until football came around again. And then all of a sudden I started getting recruited a little bit for both, but more for football. And, coming from circumstances I came from, I had to get the scholarship, and football happened to be the season first. Scholarship came first, but I asked every coach, can I play both? If I take the scholarship, can I play basketball too? And of course they all tell you, yeah. And so I went the football route thinking that I would go play basketball. I did a little bit my freshman year in Utah, but eventually, I went to college 153 pounds, Division I football player, 6'1", 153 pounds. So I was skinny. I was a basketball player playing football, masquerading as a football player. And, instead of lifting in the off season, I was playing basketball for Rick Majerus. And it got to a point we're about to start spring football. And at this time, I'm maybe 160 pounds. I was like, okay, I need to take this serious. I need to just focus in on football and kind of leave the basketball dream alone. I wouldn't to say that it completely went away. I'd be lying. There was times I go to the games at the Huntsman Center and be like, man, I should play. I come back out. But then I'd like, nah, just stay the course. And so my dreams altered probably after my freshman year of college. Actually, my dream became, okay, I'm gonna see how far this football thing takes me, and I was just hoping like maybe one day I'll be a free agent and get the opportunity to be on the practice squad. That I mean, God's honest truth. That's how I thought up until my junior year. I had a big junior year, and all of a sudden I got agents calling me and saying, hey, because I was graduating. I was a red shirt, but I was graduating, and like, you thinking about coming out? I'm like, coming out of what? They're like, college. Like, man, you done enough. You'll probably be a second, third round pick. Man, you can make some good money. I was like, really? Like, so me, I'm kind of shocked. Like, so I funneled that around for a little bit in the off season after we got done with a bowl game. You go back to school mid-January, whatever it was, and I didn't immediately go to off-season workouts. And everybody's like, is Dyson coming out early? And lo and behold, obviously I wasn't. I had to get my wisdom teeth pulled. And so that kind of bought me some time. And I decided, well, if I'm projected to be second, third round now, if I have a good senior year, I might have opportunity to go higher. And so, man, from that point on, I got focused in on it and I worked on everything. Hands, 40, routes. I made myself I was trying to close every hole in my game I could. I was watching tape. I had tape of Jerry Rice running one routes. I had tapes of him at practice. And I would go home and I'd watch those tapes. I don't know how many people even know this about me, but I still have them. They're VHS tapes. And I would go home and spend time just watching these routes. I had my roommate who also played receiver. We were just amazed at the crispness of his routes and how he was setting guys up and how smooth he transitioned from full speed to his cuts. And so I just tried to mimic everything I could from him. And in some respects, I was able to do a little bit of that. And I think that helped me. And then lo and behold, man, I grew a little bigger as far as muscular and my speed. I was borderline 4.2 guy, and next thing I know, I made myself a draftable talent and a first round draftable talent. And so I tell kids, man, if you have a dream, something like that, like professional sports, you have to see it through. If that's truly your dream, it's not you just gonna wake up tomorrow, you're gonna be a professional athlete. There's some people that are that talented, but not very many. And even people like Peyton Manning worked on his craft all the time. Tom Brady worked on his craft all the time. Even Michael Jordan worked on his craft all the time. And so that's telling you, if the most talented at something work on it. Tiger Woods, you think he just shows up at the golf course when he was in his prime and killing everybody? Nope. He worked on his craft all the time. And that's the difference between the ones that truly make it and the ones that just talk about it. Is you got to work on your craft. And that's just if I'm a jump shooter, just go to the gym and work on my jump shot. That's not working on your craft. The working on your craft is knowing yourself. What is the gaps in my ability? How do I close those gaps? Am I slower? Am I not quick laterally? Can I jump? Is my jump shot off? Can I catch the ball crisply? How's my arm strength? How's my hips? How's the strength? That's working on your craft. So getting up on Saturday morning and going to the track as a kid in high school because I thought I needed to run and doing those type of things, or in college getting up and going running routes and when nobody else was, or in the pros, making sure you're getting up and doing two-a-days before two-a-days, that's working on your craft. And I think nowadays people just they see the end result and they don't know the work that guys put in up until that point. And that's what I would tell a kid, man. It's not about if that's your dream, go get it. But you have to go get it. Because I'm in Tennessee, and in my school system alone, there's 10 high schools. So that's 10 high schools just in my school system. That's just here. There's 100 and some odd other high schools in this state, let alone in the other 49 states. So how you separate yourself? And because there's another 6'2", 100 and some 80 kid in Texas, in Florida, in Georgia, in California, in Idaho, in Washington. What's going to separate you? How do you separate yourself to get to that next level and to the ultimate dream, which is professionally? So you got to find ways to separate yourself.
Kevin, we would be remiss, or I would be remiss, when you're talking about work ethic, if we didn't have a Steve McNair story. One of my favorite, if not my favorite quarterback growing up was Warren Moon. Until I experienced Steve McNair, but I experienced Steve McNair in Alcorn State. Me and my buddy Will, shout out to Will Simmons, Eagles fan, so we don't like him that much. But him and I skipped school and watched Steve McNair. Like, it was a bowl game, and I can't remember, it was maybe on a Thursday, and we watched him at Alcorn State.
Yeah.
Can you talk to the work ethic and toughness and give us your favorite Steve McNair story of you two together?
So I think if you talk about talent for talent and work ethic, I don't know if he's on that level as far as like studying his game, like say Peyton Manning is meticulous, right? He was like a nerd when it came to studying film. I don't know if you put Steve in that category, but as far as pure heart, pure football player, haven't seen nobody since. I don't know if anybody I played with that I can put comparable to that. I've heard Brett Favre's name come up, the whole Mississippi connection maybe, of somebody that is comparable to that grit, to that level of Steve McNair. But I was fortunate enough to play with this man and his will to will his team to victory, find ways to win. I've never been around another guy like that. And Eddie probably would tell you the same thing. And Eddie was another one we relied on, especially around that time, right? But if you look at that last drive of the Super Bowl, and you look at what the plays Steve made up until the second to last play, where he had literally 600 pounds of defensive linemen hanging on him, and he breaks that tackle to complete the ball, to me, that shows you the type of heart that man had. And it's been documented, the injuries and stuff that he played with on a regular. But I don't think people understand the level of pain this man was in. And when you go in there, you're like, ain't no way he's playing today. There's no way. And sure enough, he comes out, he plays. Not only does he play, he plays hard and plays well and puts his body on the line. So as a young guy or anybody watching that, that's your quarterback. So what am I going to complain about? I can't. What am I going to say? This man can barely walk, can barely move, can barely breathe, and he is literally out here laying it on the line for us. So you know what? That little finger sprain or whatever, I can deal with it because look at this man. And I've kind of shared this over the years, and it was just it's hard to explain because we saw this man grimacing. I mean, there'd be times in the huddle, I'm like, you all right, man? Like, you need to go lay down something because you don't look so well, And you know what? He called a play, wincing, and then get up there and call the cadence, and you would know nothing different. And it just amazes you every time. And I think Eddie had that in him too. And between those two, specifically on offense, between those two, I think that just trickled down to all of us. It was just like there's nothing that you can tell us. Like they were indestructible in a lot of respects, man. Like we're playing with Iron Man. Like for real, how are these dudes even standing up? Like barely can walk on Tuesday and Wednesday, but they out there battling and playing at a high level. I'm just fortunate to have played with with both of them really. But since we're talking about Steve, fortunate enough to play with both of them, got to see them, so it's in their prime too. That was fun to watch.
Two last questions, because I know we got to get you to your son's football game. Or is it a football game or is it basketball?
Football, 7-on-7.
Okay. And I want to tell you, every single person out there listening and watching, the respect that I have for Kevin went to another level when we were scheduling the podcast, because he said, I've got to be to my son's game. And so I can do this, but I got to be to my son's game. And that was the priority. Two last questions. One, can you explain the camaraderie and brotherhood even after you're out of the NFL with your NFL brothers that you went through the trenches with? Because I see you on the podcast with Peanut. I see you, still connecting with Eddie. I see you, connecting with people. And can you talk to that brotherhood and what it means to you?
Well, there's like this unspoken Bible of football players, since we're talking about football players, but probably with athletes in general, that we understand. I can go talk to a guy who played in the NFL and listen to his stories, and I would understand everything he's talking about because I can relate to it. And this unspoken written Bible that nobody's writing, nobody knows, but we understand. We understand the language. We understand the work. We understand the pain. We understand the soreness. We understand waking up not able to move. We understand that. And so there's an empathy that comes with that conversation, that I can share a story and be like, yep, I remember that for me. A moment where I had that. And, I've even talked to people in the past. We talked about dealing with depression after retiring, or dealing with the social anxiety of performing and not feeling adequate enough. I've talked to guys about that, and these are guys I'm like, dang, you're a Hall of Famer. You were dealing with that too. You know what I mean? So guys understand it. We get each other. And for me, man, I've enjoyed learning, doing my own podcast and listen to guys' stories from different genres, whether even from business, and it's the similarities is uncanny for highly successful people. There's always this level of not wanting to let people down, feeling like enough is not enough. And then as you transition, what is my new purpose? And how do I find it again? And because you got to have something that makes you want to wake up every day and makes you want to compete. And I say that not in the sense that you wins or losses, but makes you want to get better in what you want to do. And that seems to kind of be the common denominator that I have found in my conversation with people, is those things. And I think for the most part, guys would tell you, man, I can walk in a room with a bunch of football players never met, maybe know their name, never met, and we can instantly have a connection, have a conversation, and be chucking it up like we know each other for years. Why? Because there's an unspoken Bible language that we get because of what we have been through. And for me, man, it's a time, even though it didn't happen, or I wasn't able to be as successful as I wanted due to injuries and whatnot, whatever. I'm appreciative of those moments because I get it. Even like I said, some of the most highly successful players have similar stories to me, where I feel like I left a lot of meat on my career, on the bone of my career.
I don't feel that you did, Kevin. I mean, I've been a fan since you came in the league. I'm still a fan today, and I'm still cheering, man. I started the podcast because of my two kids. One that you heard, Maddox. He's 11. He's a huge Tennessee Titans Oilers fan. He's the only kid that wears an Oilers jacket and wears Tennessee Titans to school every single day. And my daughter, who actually wears a throwback Oilers retro jacket to school, and people don't even know what it is. But I started the podcast because of the two of them. And I wanted to take iconic figures like yourself, my favorite receiver from my favorite team, and I wanted them to see that iconic people like yourself are not superheroes, that you're just human beings, that you have an amazing attitude and a crazy work ethic. And with that, you can accomplish anything. So what advice would you have for Maddox, this is huge, and McKenna from Uncle Kevin? And if you could use both of their names, Uncle Kevin, it would be awesome.
Maddox and McKenna. I think I said it earlier. First of all, I'd say it like this. Evaluation. We're all being evaluated one way or another. So if you don't evaluate yourself and see if your path is leading you to where your end destination is, you're doing yourself a disservice. So always take inventory. Always evaluate where you're at. Always evaluate if you're heading in the direction of whatever your dream may be. Then you got to be able to adapt and adjust. So if something comes up along that path that derails you, whether it be an injury, a bad test score, a loss in family, whatever it may be, you got to be able to adapt and adjust. And that is the two things that are the most crucial. And then whatever that dream may be, and it may change, especially being 11. And I don't know, how old is McKenna?
She's 14.
She's 14. And you may have to adjust your dream a little bit. It may change. It may be for now, for Maddox, it's football, and it may change to golf in 3 years. Who knows, right? He's 11. And I was the same way. Mine was basketball. And it honestly didn't change till I was 19, 20, when I thought I still wanted to play professional basketball. But if it does adjust and it does change, you still have to go at it with that same fever, that same compassion, whatever it is, whatever that end goal is, you have to attack it and try to do it to the best you can, your ability, and put your heart and soul into it, because is a guaranteed success? No, but I guarantee what a guaranteed failure is not doing that. So I'd rather put all it in and then it not work out than to almost guarantee it's not gonna work out by not going all in. And some things I like to share even with my own son, who struggles with self-confidence a lot of times, and I get on to him because we're cut a little different, and I want him to understand. Yeah, you see my memorabilia and me going pro, but it wasn't by accident, son. Like, now we're in a different age, and you can't just let kids go play for 3 hours in the park anymore like we used to and play pickup football games. But that was me working on my craft. My football camps, my personal trainer was playing football on the street, or going to the local school and playing football all day long, or going playing basketball at the park, or heading to the Boys and Girls Club and playing. That was my camp. That was my trainer. That was my time. Where now we're more intentional. We're hiring this personal trainer to work on these skill sets. Kids are not grouping up and playing neighborhood to neighborhood against other kids from other neighborhoods to play pickup baseball, basketball, or football games. They're not doing those sorts of things anymore because the suburbs has changed a little bit. People are moving out, more spread out, moving to the country a little bit more. Some people move to the high rise in the city. So there's not that sense of that competition that I had as a kid, where I literally would go to the park and play basketball until I couldn't even stand straight, famished, haven't eaten in hours, thirsty, sweaty, stinky, and everything that came with it. But I worked on my craft for hours by playing. I played all day long. And guess what I did the next day after I woke up? The exact same thing. And I would do it all again. And so that's what I would tell Maddox and McKenna is, man, whatever that dream is, man, there's stuff you can't skip. You got to do school. You got to be a good person. You got to love people. You got to love on people. But if you're going to work, if you got a dream, work on that craft. I don't care if it's music. I don't care if it's sports. I don't care if it's business. I don't care if it's education. Whatever it is, put your all into it. And you can live with the outcome if you do that. What I can't live with the outcome is not trying and not giving my all. And then I'm like, dang, well, that didn't work out. Did I really give it my all? I can't answer that. If I can't answer that with a definitive term, like yes, then I'm disappointed in myself, more or less.
It's amazing too, because now Dr. Dyson has got two master's degrees, doctorate degree, and has taken I believe that your Super Bowl is still to come. and you've continued to take it to another level. I've never been okay with being number 2, but in this sense, I'm okay with being number 2, the number 2 Titans podcast of all time, because I know yours is number 1. So, Kevin, it has been an absolute pleasure. I know you got to get to your son. I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I have dreamed of this day since I was 6 years old. I didn't dream of playing in the NFL. I dreamed of having friends that were on my favorite team. And so I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life. I would love to have you on the podcast again, because there's so many.
Back, man.
There's so
I'll
many.
come back when I got more time.
Okay, that sounds good. And I want to thank you. Can you please tell my brother Rob right now that he should switch over to being a Titans fan?
Hey, Rob, I'm just going to leave it simply put, man. Tighten up. All that other stuff, just all you need to do is tighten up. 2-tone blue, baby. That's it. Let's go.
You are officially off the hot seat. Have a great day, Kevin.
Hey, I appreciate y'all. Take care, man.